This is the car. I'm going to be replacing the rotors and the front brakes on this one. So this car is having problems with the front brakes. When I hit the brakes and I'm going fast, I get a wobbly sense. So I'm going to replace the front brakes and the rotors. All right, to fix this, I got a set of brake pads. I'm going to replace both rotors. So, got 2 rotors. This is the tire repair kit that came with the car. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dumbly jack it up the car. I'm using the jack underneath the car, so I have to go really slowly and I have to lay on my back. It would have been much smarter to do it the way that I did it later in the video. So this is the wrong way to do it. And then I just threw those blocks in there to just be like a safety measure. If the jack were to fall down, I wanted the blocks in there to hold the car up. So after I remove the wheel, I'm taking up the back bolts and I'm opening up the clamshell, which is the brake piston. Now I'm removing it all the way, which again isn't the best idea. I'm going to show later on in the video there's a better way of doing it. But you can see I brought the tire in so I could rest the brake caliper on the back there. And then here I'm really struggling with these bolts. They were on so tight. And I actually just left it in here because even though I had an extension on that ratchet, it was just so hard to get. And I should have had a breaker bar initially, and I should have had a torque wrench initially. On the next brake, when I do the passenger side, you'll see that I did it right. But here I just had to struggle through it. And these are the new brake pads. Yeah, and then this is the new rotor. And here I'm taking off that other part of the caliper, and I'm removing the old rotor. And you can see how old and messed up that one is. I actually ran to the store and picked up some new stuff. I got some, well, here, I'll describe it here. I was like, man, I don't need this light thread locker. And then I'm like, what am I talking about? I'm not gonna cheap out on the brakes.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean?
So you could just skip out.
I was like, I was just like, oh, maybe I won't do that. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, dude, what kind of a dummy like cuts corners on your car brakes? And so yeah, I decided to get the Loctite, which is a brand of thread locking material. You put that on those bolts, and apparently that just makes it so that they're a little safer. Right now what I'm trying to do is figure out if this torque wrench is working. I mean, I'm torquing it like as hard as I can, and it's not getting there. Now let's say if I set it to 25. Theoretically, it should be like, okay, that's tight enough, because like the specs are supposed to be, and I'm still tightening it. So like, do I just have to tighten these like super duper heavy? The answer is no.
You know what? You should call the guys at O'Reilly.
Good call, B.
Cool.
The O'Reilly guys kind of showed me how to do it. It hasn't clicked yet? Hasn't clicked yet? Right there, did you see it? Good, cool, got it.
Got it, woo!
I actually have to loosen this up because I over tightened it earlier because I didn't know how to use the torque wrench. See how it's not clicking? There it is, now it's clicking. So it's tight now. Okay. Okay, so now we gotta do the next thing, which is expand. I've already put the silicone paste into here. I'll try to show that on the next one if he's still helping me with the filming, because I am not good enough to do this and film at the same time. And this is a brake tool. It's for spreading the caliper. Hey V.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go in to the car and turn the steering wheel this way, because I want this to be able to come out more, but right now it's pulling on this.
Okay.
So I'm thinking if I turn this in like that, then I'll be able to...
So turn the wheel, oh, you're gonna go do it?
Just tell me if something, if I start putting strain on anything, let me know. This is actually a useful tip. Turning the wheel so that your workspace is easier is
yeah, keep going if you want a little bit.
A smart idea.
Okay, stop.
I want like extra room if possible.
Go a little bit more then. Okay, stop. Stop.
Is it tweaking that thing at all?
I don't think so. That's good.
Actually, I would like to go more if possible.
Okay. So just as long as it's not pulling it off.
Yeah, but I don't want to break anything. Is that good?
Yeah, that's good. Stop.
And so now you can see I was able to get in there and it's much easier to work with. And I'm dropping that old brake pad in there just so I get a nice smooth contact with the brake caliper. Okay, so now I've tightened this all the way down as far as I can. And now I'm loosening this up. Now that guy is depressed. Now I'm just gonna put a little brake grease on the spots where I think you're supposed to put it. You thought that was pretty funny.
What do you mean you think?
Well, the first time I've ever done this.
It's just a guessing game, huh?
It is. The idea here is that you put the grease on the points in which the metal will be rubbing against the metal, but you definitely don't want the grease on the rotor or the brake pads themselves. And I think that's why the advice is to put a little bit on. Yeah, well, you don't want grease in on this thing.
Oh, it's just, okay, I see.
And so here I struggle with it a bit. I also add some more grease. I'm the worst mechanic ever, you know that?
I don't think so.
Here I struggle with it a bit. If you watch on the next screen, I've actually put more grease on where the caliper touches the brake pad. Steve could probably do this in 10 minutes.
We'll show Steve the video and he'll be like, oh man.
My brother-in-law Steve is a real mechanic, unlike me, who just pretends to be one. And here I am hammering it. You can see there's grease on the caliper in there. I actually put that on in the meantime. But I'm foolishly hammering on it, and the right answer is coming up. I just totally realized what was the problem. This thing was turned down like that, and so as I was coming on, this little knuckle. So when I turn this just up to here, it just goes straight on.
Oh wow. Magic.
Yeah, right. And so then I'm just reassembling the brake.
That's why you keep me around, babe.
Yeah.
Sometimes you come up with brilliant ideas. Turn the wheel back so you can see what you're doing. No comment. That's okay.
And I'm just hand tightening these. The specs were to 25 pounds, which is pretty much just as tight as I can go. I'll share a link in the video of a better description of how to do this process. Mine is basically the rookie version. I mean, it is the way it's supposed to be. But right now they're grinding. My understanding is that these are self-adjusting. Here I'm just removing the lug nuts because I use those to hold the rotor into place while I was rebuilding the caliper. And I'm just ensuring that the valve stem matches with the hubcap. And now I've gotten wiser and I'm starting to use my impact drill to seat the lug nuts in the wheel. And off camera, I tighten those up using the manual one. I like to give it just a little bit more strength because you don't want your wheel falling off.
Do you hear that slightly grinding sound?
Yeah.
So yeah, what we'll do is when we get the other one up, when we get the other wheel up, I'll test to see if it makes this kind of sound. But I remember this, like, I think this is good.
Do you think that's normal?
Yeah.
And so here I'm jacking the car up in a much more intelligent way, using the impact driver, and I also have the wrench on the side of the car, so I don't have to crawl underneath in order to get the wheel up. And you can see that was way easier.
You see, you can still hear it a little bit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think we're good.
Cool.
Good job. Those lug nuts are too tight to get started with that. So,
Oh, here I'm lowering it down in order to have the wheel connect with the concrete so that the wheel doesn't spin as I'm turning these off.
I had to put the wheel down so I could loosen these up. You gotta back up.
Wow, you're being very aggressive.
Default. It's good to be aggressive sometimes. Not in everything, I guess.
And once I got those lug nuts off, I just jack the car up so that I can remove the tire. And here we go again.
Time.
Brake
Look.
job number 2.
You see, the
It's all
existing
good.
ones have the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I'm doing okay.
Doing great, babe.
And so here I'm removing the top bolt, which will allow me to open up the space for the lug nut. And this one's tight as well. So I'm using the lug nut wrench to extend my wrench and make it that much, make it so that I have more torque as I'm pulling on the device. I'm actually loosening up the bottom bolt as well, which will make it so that the clamshell will be able to open up a little easier. And then here I'm turning the wheel. This is lessons I've learned from the last one. And that's giving me an idea for how to open up the brakes and remove the brake pads.
Okay, so now I'm just taking the brake pads out.
Whoa.
And so,
Let's see the brake pads, babe. They're pretty fucked up.
these are the brake pads. These are so bad. Probably real brake guys are like, oh my god, you guys are on the verge of death. Anyways, I'm closing this back up for the time being. Yeah, we want to take this all off, and we might as well leave it in one piece rather than taking it apart. So I'm gonna turn the wheel so I have access to.
You can see in this one I'm actually doing it in an intelligent manner.
Do you want to tell us about the wrench, what you had to do?
Well, this is a torque wrench. I'll talk about it later.
Okay.
I'm using the torque wrench to loosen the bolts, which is probably not 100% what you're supposed to do. Oh my god. That was so much easier than the last ones. It's insane how bad I was at this just a few minutes ago.
Look how far you've come now.
Obviously
Yeah.
I'm improving by renting one of these tools, and I was able to rent it from a local auto shop, auto parts store for $1 and then return it, which was a great deal. Here I need to make sure to hold the caliper as I remove the bolt because otherwise the caliper will fall off. And I've got the wrench stuck between the bolt and the wall, so I'm putting the wrench, drilled it back in a little bit, and now I'm backing that bolt completely out.
To the top.
And because I don't want to put strain on the brake line, I'm just using
Why
a
did you do
clamp.
that?
I tightened it here so that it wouldn't be dangling on this cord. I'm trying to keep pressure off that cord. And this guy should come off. Alright, all the old pieces are off now.
And here I'm just using a wire brush in order to clean up the bolts that will rest on the new rotor.
Okay. Looks clean to me. How about you?
Yeah, it looks clean.
And I'm just vacuuming it all up because I like to try to make it as clean as possible. I'm not sure if that's necessary or not. I'm just using some brake cleaner here to remove the residue. As you can see, I'll show the pad here.
Look at that. That's how much just came off of there. Brand new. I think that they put oil on them to keep them protected from rusting in transit. So
And initially when I'm setting the rotor on there, I'm just going to put 2 lug nuts on there so that it's easy to work with. And obviously I've wisened up, so I'm using the impact wrench. And now I'm able to put this on.
I'm just putting this in temporary just to hold this here for now. So this is thread locker. I think you put this on to make it so that these don't come loose.
Okay.
The one that I put in just to hold it in place. Now I'm going to take that out so I can put the thread locker on it.
Yeah, so what happened there is I sat the tool in there, or the caliper in there, with the original bolt, and then that way it was easier to apply thread locker and put the bolts back in place the way they were supposed to. And then here I'm finally using the torque wrench in a proper manner.
Did you hear it?
And it's just that little click. And it's easy to ignore if you're kind of going fast and not paying attention. That's what happened the first time. That's why I over-tightened the bolts.
It seems too easy.
And when you do it right, it's
So
much
the
easier.
first time. No, I just turned the wheels all the way to the right, and so now when I loosen this guy up and lower it down, just got put this guy back in here. I wiped off all the old lubricant and put some more on, and now this should be freshly lubricated.
So here, again, I'm just stretching out the caliper. You can see I'm doing the same thing. I'm using the old brake pad to create a flat surface for the caliper. And just using that brake tool to push it back.
Okay, now that it's all pushed back there, it should stay. When I take this off, that's a good sign.
And now I'm just going to apply grease. And now I'm a little bit more confident because I know kind of how these things sit in there. On the bottoms is where the rubber will be pushing as the brake is kind of wiggles back and forth. And then on the back, I'm also putting grease there where the caliper touches the back of the brake pad. Now that I know about that little knob on the top, I'm able to get it in much easier. No hammers and really no force at all. This second job went far more smoothly than the first one did. And here I'm just removing the lug nuts because the rotor's held in place now. And I'm doing another cleaning job because my hands are filthy. And using the brake cleaner helps me get that rotor nice and clean. Obviously, having a slippery rotor is not the ideal situation in your vehicle. And so, yeah, tires back on, and now I'm just aligning the hubcap with the stem for the tire. And I'm wizened up now. I've got the power tool, so I'm able to do this far quicker. And I prematurely lowered the car.
That happened way too quick.
Yeah.
Because I forgot to take the pads out.
Safety things in there.
But it did stick the tire to the ground, so I was able to use the lug wrench to tighten up the wheel, which was my goal. But again, I'm just jacking the car up.
All right, I can get the safety blocks out now. So yeah, I just finished the brake job, and the decision was, should I do my own brakes or hire somebody else to do it? And I was like, oh, it'll be fun. I can make a movie. It'll be an excuse to do something with my hands again. And I don't know what to think in hindsight. It was kind of fun, but it was more stressful, and I don't even know if I did a good job. Time will tell. I still have to test it. If this is the last video I ever make, that'll be really funny.
Any, yeah, I suppose you can't suggest anything yet because you just don't know if it was a success.
Oh my god, can you imagine the comedy if I was like, yeah, that's how you do a brake job. It's like Ian died that evening in a terrible brake accident. God damn it.
No.
That's what was leaking. So I think what happened was when I pushed the pistons of the front wheels all the way down, that this was overflowing, and that's what this was from here, and that's why I was leaking down there. And my theory is right now is when I turn the car on and push the brakes. Okay, cool. The brake was super loose and it went all the way to the ground, but now it's actually way tighter. Okay, so now we'll check it. Cool, and now it's going down. It's still way too high.
How do they feel?
Feel good so far.
And my testing worked out. Everything turned out the way it was supposed to, from what I can tell. We've only driven around town, but we're planning on driving 8 hours in a few days, and so I think the brakes will be very useful for that trip.
Works 100%. The wobble's all gone. So, not 100% recommended. Well, I don't know. What you think about it? Like, replacing the front brakes would have cost like $300. I spent $200, so I saved $100 for all that work. What do you think? It's a tough call.
Thank you for watching.